Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Andrew Davis, and this is Embolden, the show where we talk about controversial issues in pop culture and comics, and we talk about it in an adult way. And obviously, I got a good friend of mine, Taylor Campbell, on from Outlaw Comics. So welcome to
What
the show.
up? What's up, buddy?
Nothing much, nothing much. I just got my tea, and I'm perfectly happy in my nice Bob Ross mug that, as I drink it, it will fade to black. So Bob Ross will be saying goodbye to us at some point tonight. But obviously, you have a bunch of stuff going on, and the topic is sort of preparing for a launch year slash loading up the truck slash preparing and taking a year off so that the next year you can launch a bunch of projects. And before we get into that, though, where can people find you? Know what you do, buy your comics, and all sorts of fun stuff like that.
We are at Outlaws Comics on literally every social media site that exists in the United States. Our website's down right now because I didn't really feel like paying for the website builder for this year. So if you want to buy a book, message me. I'll give you my PayPal.
Perfect. So obviously, I want to get into the topic because, and I think if I'm wrong, please correct me at any given point. But I think you've been taking a year off from producing any Kickstarters, producing any books to prepare for 3 or 4 books next year or even more, and also doing social media and starting to really, I guess, take the next step and having more of a constant flow in your business of producing comics. And so, what is the idea of doing that? Because there's a lot of, I guess, discussion on what is the best route, if you should release it in piecemeal or having more of a plan and all that stuff. So, where are you in that process, and what is the rationale before we start diving into this?
All right. So we are taking a year off from pretty much everything. We're producing all year. We have three books left in each series that we still need to release that we're working on right now. And then we have a wrap up for the first season of both books together in one book that we'll release after those. That we're going to do it all next year. We're going to launch either in January or February. We're about halfway through the 3rd issue of Kane right now and about halfway through the 2nd issue of Unidentified at the moment.
So, where do you find that from? Because it's a very interesting idea to say, hey, I want to take a year off and I actually want to get the entire thing done or a lot of it done so that when I do come back in 2024, I could really focus on promoting it, getting it out, and having a lot of issues out there. Because I think this is a big issue that a lot of creators struggle with, especially when they're just starting out or when they're trying to cash flow it versus having, I guess, 4 or 5 issues already done and having the whole thing, done and then worrying about sort of getting it on the back end, the funding.
Well, we started this in 2018, and at the time, we really just wanted to produce something and put it out there. But in that time, we've put out 3 books, and that's what? It's 5 years, 3 books. And I mean, in my experience, when I like something, but it just disappears for 6 months between releases, you kind of lose interest. So I think consistency is like the most important thing after content. So I think taking a year off would just be like the best possible thing we can do so we can release a book every other month, nonstop. And then next year, as we're releasing books, we can work on the entire 2nd season for each book. So we're all set up for the next year after that. It just struck me one day as I was sitting there doing social media, getting, no responses on anything as usual, letting likes roll into about 25. And I just think it's the best possible business model that we can come up with to build an audience.
Yeah, let's this because I think that's problems. I mean, I am a huge Law and Order fan, and they release 24 episodes every single season, and they do it almost every single week. And obviously, they film a bunch of those episodes and then they have them ready to go. And it keeps me interested because I know it's coming out on Thursday or Friday morning. I could catch it on Peacock. And I think this is one of the problems with indie comics, especially if you only have one or two titles. And so I guess, how did this even, saying we're going to go take that risk too? Because that's something that I think is a huge problem. But I also realize that when you take a year off, all of a sudden people think you go out of business and then you're going to be coming back. And so, what is this like for you? Because it's a weird space, and I haven't seen anybody really take a year off in comics in this fashion in a while.
Well, that's another thing. It's not something I've ever seen anyone do either. So it seemed like a good experiment to, venture out into. And the upside about having 3 Kickstarters under our belt is we can tell them what we're doing and we can update them. And then when we do release again, we can let them know then. What we're going to do is in November or December, we're going to make a Facebook event and invite everybody to it so that when we launch, we can do a video, we can go live and get me and probably Allison, my artist, on it. We can do a bunch of shit so that everybody knows that we're back.
Do you also feel it's a rebranding and a re-opportunity to build this up again? Because when you do 3 books and then you're now going to be releasing, I think 5 or 6 or possibly more. If you're doing it every other month, you're going to be releasing about 6 books next year, right?
We may have to add another one in there somehow, like make it work, but it's going to be 7 books.
But do you feel that this is also a rebirth in a lot of ways where you're now transforming the company from just being simply a product to now becoming more along the lines of a comic company? Because no offense, but 3 books in 5 years is a little rough versus doing 7 books in a year. And now you're becoming almost a company. You're becoming a publishing house versus saying, hey, we're going to do 1 Kickstarter, 2 Kickstarters a year. Because I know people who do, $25,000, but they only do 2 Kickstarters a year. They do 30,000, but you're not really a company at that point. Whereas if you're doing 7 books, you're now becoming a comic book publisher, and I think there's a big difference.
Exactly, that is the point. I love indie, and we're still always going to be indie, but it would be nice to feel like a little bit more than that, to bring other people in. We've got other things we're working on. We're going to do audio versions of the books, like old school audio dramas. Me and a friend, we're going to do a podcast under the same banner. I've got a couple of the people who are going to do the audio dramas. We're going to do scripted, like half-hour podcasts with them as their character. We're branching out in a big way.
Yeah, because it's sort of a media launch for you as well as what I'm hearing on this, where you're now not wanting just to do comics. And I think this is something else that a lot of creators don't understand is that I am not a podcasting company in my business. I am a media company, and there's other things obviously coming around. And so what is that like too? Because you're expanding. And obviously, we were speaking about Lori Calcaterra, I want to say is her last name.
She's a big influence for me.
And she's starting to do stuff like that too. And so what is this like to say, hey, we can't put all of our eggs in one basket, where comics are just the gateway in a lot of ways?
Well, honestly, the original idea of branching out, like actually doing it came up in my head a few times, but like actually doing it was in one of your like group things that I was in. I can't remember who said it. It might have been Luke. I'm not sure who, but he said, the best way to get your name out there is to go in multiple different ways, do different things, multimedia. And then, Lori with that news report video she did like 3 months ago, that was just awesome, man. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was clever. I thought it was smart. And also it's out there and you never know when it's going to hit. You never know what it's going to do in an algorithm on YouTube. And it's very interesting. Obviously, social media is very, very interesting at this point. And making content is very, very interesting. And it's very important to understand how to do it because somebody who might not necessarily read a comic book might listen to a podcast or an audio drama. And then if they like what they hear, naturally they're going to say, cool, what's the source material for it?
Exactly.
And so what is this like though to plan all this? Because obviously in this down year, you're finishing up the comic stuff, and then you're also planning to do all this stuff and introduce this stuff. And what is this like? Because you're obviously mapping out where you want season one for all this stuff to wind up going and ending in with Kane and a variety of other things. And so what is that like? Because having a game plan, I think, is also crucial, and if you have a whole year to finish everything up, it sort of starts setting up what you want. And I think a lot of creators struggle with this too, is that they're just trying to get their first book done and they don't really know where they want to be in 5 issues.
Yeah, it's stressful as hell. I haven't sat down to even write it. Well, season 2 of the books yet. I'll probably do that between September and December at the end of the year, as I'm working on everything else. But it's a lot. But I mean, it's mostly the biggest part for me is just raising the funds to, fund this whole thing.
Yeah, that's actually so. What if you outlay a bunch of money up front and know that you're going to be kickstarting it and catching it on the back end, but not exactly have the money to do it or be out from your first Kickstarter. So obviously, if you're going to launch in January or February, and we are in March, it's March 25th. What is that like? That you're essentially 10 months out from funding, or you're almost 11 months out technically, and even navigating that because obviously, I think everybody understands being 2 weeks out from a paycheck. But what is that like knowing that you're gonna have to produce? I don't know how many pages, but
It's a lot.
what is it? What is it? Your books are what, like 28, 32 pages, right?
Yeah. The unidentified books after the first book are all about 24 pages. Every episode of Kane is 30, except for the last one, which is 32. It's a lot. It's closing in on 200, if not. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, what is it? Because this is one of the biggest problems and why people can't necessarily plan out, get pages done ahead of time because it gets expensive, even if your artist is reasonable to outlay a lot of money like that. I mean, and you're not laying it all out every single, month, but even if you lay out, 4 grand, for lack of a better word, it's a lot of money to lay out knowing that you're not going to see that for 11 months. I mean, that's not the easiest thing to navigate. And you could plead the fifth at any point. Any point you want to plead the fifth, be my guest.
Well, that's why it took us so long to finish the first book. It took us 2 years to finish the first book because we just didn't have the money, man. So I'd pay her for a couple pages. She'd do a couple pages, and then I'd pay her for a couple more. And, she wasn't that fast at doing the pages then because it was her first book too. But, I mean, at this point, I've learned the best way to go about it is to realize you're not likely going to make on the first or second or third or fourth. You're not going to make back what you spent because it costs so much money to make a book. But I've finally gotten to the point in my other 2 businesses of mowing grass and cleaning cars that I know I will make enough to fund these books, enough left over to buy all the audio equipment I'm going to have to buy to do the podcasting and the other audio shit we're going to do. So, I mean, it's stressful, and I know making a book is expensive, but it's worth it if it's something you really want to do. Figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, that's to even go further, I should say, is that I mean you're taking a risk, and I view it as almost startup money. And so, I mean, my understanding of how people do this, everybody has a different view on this. Some people, want to do something, they use it as startup money, and they're going from issue 1 to issue 2 to issue 3, and their expenses don't change all that much, and they're losing maybe 500, but they're going maybe 2 books at a time. They do it every 6 months on Kickstarter versus, what you're doing. And I haven't seen this done in a very long time, if ever, where you're getting everything done. And then you almost seem that your battle plan is to recoup it at the back end, or rather potentially use this next year in 2024 with all the money you get from the Kickstarter to handle some printing and then be seed money for season two. And hopefully you're going to get to the stage where, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not going to need to pump in new money into any of this if 2024 goes accordingly.
Oh, the money we make on the Kickstarter isn't even going to pay for the printing. I'm doing all the printing ahead of time because as soon as that Kickstarter's done, books are out the door. I'm not waiting because you could order books and then something could go wrong and then you could be waiting 2 months for them to even show up to you. And Kickstarter's made it very clear to me that if I don't have books shipped out, I can't launch another project. I can't even put up a pre-launch page. So I'm ordering all the books ahead of time, getting them out the door as soon as it closes.
Yeah, that's actually this is one of my pet peeves ever. And I'm very vocal about this. I think it is very dangerous that Kickstarter allows verified creators to launch a project without getting their books out the door on their current one. And my argument is actually rooted in the idea that what winds up happening is that if somebody launches project A and they say it's a year out, that's fine and they raise 60,000. But what happens when they start getting late or they dip into the cookie jar because they have a crisis on that project? But then they launch project B and then project C and project D, and they're dipping into the cookie jar and they now have $180,000 over 6 or 7 projects, but they haven't delivered on anything. And then they're using project E to cover project A, and then they use project F to cover project B. And I think it's a very dangerous position in a lot of ways. And I'm curious how you feel about that because you don't seem to be wanting to go down that path where if you have your printing done already, then you could simply get it out and then whatever you make on the Kickstarter, you could pay it back to yourself if, you fund way over what your printing costs.
Yeah, I don't know who these verified creators are who get to launch, before they've even delivered, but I'm obviously not one of them. But I mean, I feel like the rules should be the same for everybody. If I can't launch even a pre-launch page before I've delivered, I don't really think anybody should be able to do it.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
it seems weird to have different rules for different people.
Yeah, I think it's a very bad policy. I understand the argument where it's kind of like, well, if you've proven yourself and you've run 5 of them successfully, I get the argument that you should be rewarded for good behavior. But also what I've learned is just because you've done something good in the past doesn't mean that'll be it in the future. And also when you're now dealing with people who are raising $600,000 on Kickstarter, I mean, we're getting to a point where this ends up being a Ponzi scheme because one day somebody's going to have a problem, intentionally or unintentionally, and they're going to either make an exit or they tripped over a pebble going 90 miles an hour on a bicycle. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're going 10 miles an hour on a bicycle and you hit a pebble, you don't go flying. When you hit 90 miles and you hit that pebble, you're going flying off your bike. And that's a problem for me. And I think it's a real issue. And I think this is also preparing for your launch in a lot of ways where understanding what printing looks like.
Yeah. I've had to deal with plenty of my own printing issues at this point. And yeah, I'm just using the things that I've learned in the past to figure out the best way forward. And I think the way we're doing it is going to be the best way forward. And guess what? If it goes really well, it's a good map for other people to do.
Yeah, and then going further into this, because you mentioned something really cool there too, is that I believe in experimentation in Kickstarter. And I've got surprised for what I did for my podcast, raising funds for this show. And I didn't understand why, and I still don't. And it is that I tried something asking for money for this show, and I think some people got it, and I think some people didn't. And I think that I was semi-successful, but I don't think I was ultra successful by any stretch of the imagination. And I realized that the market has spoken in a lot of ways. And so it wasn't the idea, but I've gotten criticism from a lot of different people for it. And my response is that, well, I tried something. And if we don't try new ideas and new ways how to do things and new business models, then I don't know how we grow. Because sometimes you have to fail at one and then be like, cool, that's not the answer. And then I'll try something else. And then if that's the answer, great. So what is that like for you? Because you're trying something on Kickstarter, you're trying a business model and a business plan and a strategy. And I think it's very important. And I'm not saying it's going to be successful or unsuccessful, but I think it's very important that people recognize that if you don't try this and we don't engage in this and we don't try new ideas and new structures, then how the hell can we grow as a community? And I think that's a real issue right now in comics.
Yeah, I think it was Ben Franklin who said, if I failed 100 ways, I learned 100 ways not to do something. So that's where we're at. And I mean, I'm not super concerned. I don't think it's going to fail. I mean, my Kickstarters up to this point haven't been like super successful. The most we've made is $1,200 on one. So at this point, how much worse can it possibly be? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I normally get 20 to 30 backers, some of them always come back, which means they'll keep coming back. And if I'm releasing on a regular schedule, it seems like a safe bet we'll pick up more people faster if we're doing it multiple times a year.
Yeah, that's interesting. The retention rate. I feel retention rate is one of the biggest things where, and I like to use business terms. People on Kickstarter don't know their CAC, customer acquisition cost, and customer retention cost, and that's something that I think is very interesting. And if you launch 6 of them a year or 7 of them a year, your retention rate should be better. It should be better, and naturally, when you're going 6 times a year, even if you go 4 times a year, that's a lot where your audience is then going to know that you're every odd month, for instance, or you're every even month. And all of a sudden they know like clockwork how to budget for you. They know how to be there. And then also if they all come out on day 1 or day 2, that also affects, your algorithm. And that's very important as well. And so that's something that I think is going to be extremely beneficial to you where you're taking a step back to sort of load up the chamber, for lack of a better word. And I think that that's what's interesting. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because I think it's so important to have a pipeline.
Yeah, I'm also hoping that being on a regular release schedule gets me on that coveted, what is it? The creators we love.
Oh, yeah.
Projects we love.
Projects we love.
Yeah, I've yet to get on that, and I'm hoping that'll help get us there. Because, as soon as you open the Kickstarter page, that's the first thing that comes up. I'd like to be there.
Yeah, no, I don't really get it. Like I've seen everybody get it, and I've seen really bad books get it. I've seen really good books not get it.
Me too.
Just like, this doesn't make any goddamn fucking sense.
Yeah, I feel the same way, buddy.
I don't get Kickstarter's algorithm. I don't get the push on it. I don't get why a project gets projects we love and why a project doesn't. And it also doesn't really determine what I back and what I don't back. Because I could care less about it. I really can. But I'm also in a position because I interview a lot of people. And because when you interview people and I scroll through Facebook for really interesting guests and Instagram and Twitter, I'm at the leisure that I get to see 900 projects a year and I'll pick 50. So I'm also not the standard in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really sure how their algorithm works either, but I'm holding out hope that Elon Musk buys Kickstarter so the algorithm just goes crazy.
I was hoping he was going to buy Crunchyroll. I was hoping he was going to buy Crunchyroll.
That's
buy Crunchyroll, and then
that's the anime streaming, right?
That's an anime streamer. It's a
Uh,
pretty big one. It's like the biggest. It went for 1.2 billion to Sony. Um, and if Sony wasn't an ADR, I would buy Sony all day.
I had Crunchyroll for a while because my kids really liked the Batman Spider-Man ripoff, the Batman Spider-Man. They were a big fan of that one. It was weird. It was a weird time in our house.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, and I don't think I want to.
Well, when you start drinking again, you should watch it.
I'm probably not going to drink till May or even maybe June.
All right. Well, then you have time to prepare.
I have plenty of things to do, and I'm getting rid of all my vices, and I'm functioning a hell of a lot better, everybody. A hell of a lot better.
Yeah, you're just not to the point where you realize that you hate the world yet. Just give it another couple months. You'll be there.
Oh, no, I figured that one out. I figured that one out real fast. That's not that hard to figure out. In which that it's not even that I hate the world. I hate people in the world in many ways because there's a lot of bad people.
That's how I feel. I actually do love the world. It's a pretty place, especially right here in the good old US of A. It's the people that suck.
Yeah, I agree. I just watched the Waco, Texas documentary on Netflix, and that was rough. Everybody in that documentary was bad. Everybody. There's
Yeah.
not one good person, and there's not one good, decision that was made through that entire 3-hour documentary.
No, especially the part where they basically burned children alive in the basement. That was a downer.
That was bad. It was from the right how they were gonna serve the warrant, where they wanted a news story, right? Right from the news story, they tipped them off. And so really everybody wanted the news story. They go to the post office guy who was apparently in the cult, and then he warns them, and then they get tipped off, and then they still go ahead, and 51 days later, it's a disaster. From
Yeah.
start to finish, because everybody made a bad decision.
Yeah. I think intention was the problem because, well, the ATF showed up number one and they just bungled the whole thing. If they would have went in there to get the kids that were likely being molested by David Koresh, they probably could have figured it out. They went there to confiscate their legal guns, though. That's the problem.
It's whatever. It's whatever.
I think we got off topic, though.
All right. It's all right. It's relevant to this topic. It's absolutely relevant. It was a great documentary. I recommend everybody go see it. And then after you're done seeing that, if you want something that's going to freak you out, watch the MH370 documentary on Netflix too, and that'll freak you out too because I can tell you exactly where that plane is. I know where that plane is.
Oh, is that the plane that disappeared?
Yes, I know exactly where that plane is.
Is it not at the bottom of the ocean?
It's not. It's at the bottom of the ocean. The
Okay.
question is at what ocean is it at the bottom of?
Oh. All right, then.
I'm pretty sure it's not where people think it is.
Well, that would make sense given that they can't find it.
I don't think it's near Australia. I think it's near China.
You said it wrong. It's near China.
And I could tell you who probably brought that plane down too.
Was it China?
It's probably the U.S. brought the plane down.
Well, that would be a downer.
It was a necessary act of war, guys. It was a necessary act of war. If you think about it, what was on that plane? I guarantee you that something that was damning to the U.S. was on that plane. I'm willing to put real money on it because it's the only logical conclusion that is out there. If you look at all the facts, it is the only logical conclusion that is out there. And I guarantee you that the plane was brought down and then it was salvaged relatively quickly.
You know what I just realized? I just blew my crowdability with a lot of people. I just realized I was still wearing my Louder with Crowder hoodie.
It's all right. It's all right. Honestly, I did a whole show about Louder and Crowder and ownership of your property with Chris Brown. And it was a great episode because what he did is every comic creator should watch his breakdown of the Daily Wire and Jeremy Boring's breakdown of what happened and the Patrick Bet David and him on Tim Pool. Those four things is what every comic creator needs to watch, read, or however you want to break it down. Not because you agree or disagree with Crowder, but because you need to know what your property rights are and how to set up deals.
Oh, I agree, though. I like the guys on the Daily Wire, but they're no Steven Crowder.
Oh, I understand that.
Numbers aren't even Steven Crowder's numbers.
I understand that. I'm just saying that on a political, even tabling the content, understanding how to protect yourself in a deal and what is a predatory deal and what isn't is such an important thing, especially in today's age. And this is
for sure.
It's going to get me canceled. But I think it's real saying, look, you have a book that comes out, everything can be licensed, and every TV station, Disney, Hulu, Netflix wants it, Amazon wants it, Peacock wants it, you name it, they want it. Amazon wants it. And so at a certain point, you need to understand what a predatory deal looks like and what it doesn't and what you're entitled to and what you're not entitled to. And you need to realize, cool, this is where we're going. And he highlighted that so extensively.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. I mean, I think that pretty much every time a Marvel TV show is made and then someone's posting about how they didn't get paid for it, I'm like, did you read your contract, though? Did it say you'd get paid for anything ancillary after? Because you signed it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It sucks. I get it. I get why they're upset. Like, I would be too. Even if most of the Marvel TV shows lately suck balls, you should at least get paid for the garbage that they're making. But, like, you'll know better next time.
Yeah, absolutely. They should. They should. But you know what is? People don't read contracts. People do not understand contracts. I mean, there are plenty of predatory contracts in comics right now with publishers that are ludicrous, and are extremely monopolist, if that's a word. Monopoly oriented might be a better way to say it. And it's very dangerous because if the book fails, you can't touch it for 5 years. That is rough. That is a rough pill to swallow because let's be realistic. After Aftershock went down and the way comics are going, there's real problems right now in comics.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know what Aftershock is.
It's a comic company that has about $50 million in debt.
Jesus.
I mean, the way you get $50 million in debt is that you were making TV shows and you're making movies and you were doing stuff in production beyond comics. It's not that you were just producing a comic book. To have $50 million worth of debt and just producing a book every single month, DC doesn't have $50 million of debt in comics. They might have a lot more than that, but they're also producing billion-dollar movies. But the comic business of DC does not have $50 million in debt by any stretch of the imagination. I think their operating costs have to be less than $20 million at minimum or maximum because it's not that expensive to produce a comic. All things considering, if you're producing in large numbers.
Yeah. I'm going to bet they're probably at least a little in debt from the recent releases of Shazam and what was the other one? Black Adam. I didn't see either one, and I liked the first Shazam, so I'm definitely going to see that, but I heard they didn't do well.
I don't even think it's a deal. I don't even think it's going to hurt them all that much.
Well, no.
I really don't care about that. But my point is that the comic side of DC is not having $50 million of debt. Their movies division probably does, but that's not the point.
No.
Warner Bros. Discovery is just fine. But we are so off topic. We are so off
topic.
This is what happens.
I know.
To even go further into this, though, because I do want to touch upon something that is interesting, and it goes to what we were talking about with the Kickstarter stuff, is that I have an issue where, and I don't know where the sweet spot is on this, and I'm curious what you think, is if you're launching a campaign every 2 months, as a consumer, I can get drained very efficiently, very quickly, depending on how much somebody launches. And if I want everything and I want higher end tiers, so what is that like for you? Because it is really good to launch every 2 months or even launch once a month. But there also gets to a point where it's just like you've now drained my bank account and then you're gonna do it again and again and again. And I have a budget every single month that I could spend money on. And I also have a business budget. And unfortunately, I have to choose between 4 or 5 good projects every single month. And so, what is that like figuring even out how to hit up a good month, a bad month, and also kind of, say, cool, if we're launching every 2 months, how are we going to make sure that our backers and the people who want to support us aren't completely bankrupted by what we're doing?
Well, if you have seen our campaigns before, which I know you've seen them, you never supported one, but you have seen them. We try to keep the prices as low as humanly possible, and we don't do those big crazy tiers. We did do a dealer bundle last time, and nobody got it. But I mean, that was the highest we've ever went, and our books right now they're at $5, but that's because we printed such a low rate that it's almost $4 for us to even print a book. So if we want to make any type of money on them, we got to price them at like $5. But the hope is that with the consistent basis and the retention rate and the building of an audience, the more we get and the more we print, the less we have to pay. The cheaper the books are to print, and that will be reflected in what we're charging. Like if it drops down to $250, we'll charge $4. If it drops down to $150, we'll charge $3. The prices go down, the more people that we get.
So, to even talk about, are you going to be printing more books up front? Because if you're doing something like Canyon and identifiable, are you going to be, and you're going to be doing issues 3, 4, and 5, and you're going to need some of those older issues, obviously, especially when you come into issues, when you bring issues 3 on both those titles. Are you printing a bunch of issue 1s and issues 2s purposely so that when you come to issue 4 and when you come to issue 5, that you have those readily available, or even like in issue 3? Or is it that once you get to issue 5, you're better off not really reprinting any of those issues anymore and just going to a trade paperback at a later date?
Well, what we're first going to do is when we get closer and all the books are done, we're going to start off with a print of 50 books of each one. We got a bunch of back issues still here left over, but I'm going to print 50 of everything, and then we'll see where it goes from there, because that's 50 of each book. So that's 10, 20. So that's 500 books altogether. So that should bring the price down like a little bit.
You get why I ask, because
Oh,
this
yeah.
is the other side of it, where even preparing for business, because right now, and I'm very honest with this, I am going through expansion in my eBay business. And so I am clearly coming to the conclusion that this is actually going to be a down year for me. And it's going to be a very cash flowing expansion year. And I'm building out my first exclusive. It's not a comic, it's a trading card. And it's a limited 25 set. And then probably either September or October of this year, I might actually pick up a 50 print run of my own exclusive book. And so I'm going through expansion, knowing full well that it's going to take me a little while to sell those items, but I'm bringing in and I'm going through expansion. And so I'm coming in with a battle plan purposely with certain books that I think are going to do well, that are popular. And so naturally, the cheaper I can get something, the better off I'm going to be. I'm also looking at popularity, and I look at what other people are doing with, certain books. And I'm like, cool, what can I do here with X? And so that's kind of where I'm figuring out a bunch of stuff. And I think it's really interesting because I don't even think it's the creation side anymore. I think it's understanding what cons am I going to be doing? Where am I going to sell my book? What is my website going to look like? What is my price points going to look like? And I think that's really the other side of this. That is super, super important. Am I going to try to get a con exclusive? Am I going to be doing store signings? Things of that nature, because I think that's the other side to making money in this business. And it's not any more creation that matters.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people they like exclusive covers. It's not really the kind of thing that I do. I did it once and it didn't really show any extra money. And honestly, I care more about the story itself. But next year, it does happen to be the year of the ending of Stranger Things, and me and my artist were talking, and we're thinking about doing some homage covers for the ones we already have released for that, and the hopes that that'll generate a little bit of some new readers. And I think we could come up with something pretty cool looking. So that's pretty much the only thing we have planned at the moment like that. But
I just think it's and I think that taking a year off and going through, creation and getting all that shit prepared, because it's just the idea that, if you have the story, or even if you just worked on scripts, now you're freeing up time elsewhere. And also just cash flowing in, and also, just getting ahead. Because the other side of this too is that, I hate to say this, but artists are now getting booked up and picked up like crazy, not even just by DC, Marvel, Image, or all these other small publishers, but also by other creators. And there's a saying where Lori was speaking about this, where you have to keep your artist busy if you want them to continue to work with you. And anytime you can start getting your artists working on an issue 4 or an issue 5 and keep feeding them work, it's very, very crucial. And even if they say, oh, no, I'm not going to leave you high and dry, it happens all the time. And so that's something that I think a lot of people also don't prepare. I've seen it where person is on issue 3 and then by issue 4, they've had to move on. And that also delays a bunch of shit.
yeah, that's why it's a good thing I have a good relationship with my artists already. They already know when they're going to be paid and that they're going to be paid. So as soon as we finished up the last book, they started on the next one. Even though they haven't been paid for it yet, they know I'm going to pay them. So we're on like an end of the month schedule because I'm now charging for my other businesses at the end of every month. So as soon as I get paid, they get paid. So as soon as Unidentified 1 was done, art already started on number 2. And that's what we're going to just keep doing. And I've fostered a good relationship with my artists to the point that they don't want to leave. They know they're going to make money with me. They know they're going to keep working. And I don't know. I like the story, but even if the writing sucks, they're drawing cool shit. So they enjoy it.
Fair
And
enough.
they're talented as fuck. So there's that.
They're what?
They're talented as fuck. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it completely. In which that I understand how to spot and buy talent. It's a skill. And it's very important to recognize talent. There's a reason why there's all these weird people that have been on my show and in the last 9 years, and a bunch of them have gone onward and upward into very, very, very cool positions. And when you spot talent, you don't let it go if you can afford it.
Is that what you keep having me on?
And then the final thing I want to talk about, as far as I guess your launching year, loading up the truck, is that what does social media look like for you? Because that's the other thing too, is that obviously for me, unfortunately, I used to load up 90 days out, but Hootsuite became a little too expensive for me. They were charging like $650 a year, which is a little pricey.
What is that?
Hootsuite?
Yeah.
It was almost like TweetDeck essentially, but it was a better software, and they were charging a little too much money for me.
Crap.
And it was either I could pick up $650 worth of merch and cash flow it and buy stock and some other stuff, or I could buy my Twitter, scheduling, and I like to schedule stuff, and then I was doing good with it, and I had a lot of tweets scheduled. I probably had about 1,500 tweets scheduled, and now it was just whatever, and there's not an answer for it. I don't have an answer for it at the moment. There's competitors that are like $30 a month, but even still, they're not as good. as Hootsuite. But it definitely is a problem I have to solve. But what does that look like for you, knowing that, hey, I got a year off of handling that social media, but even planning social media in the future? Because I'm going through planning YouTube Shorts and TikToks and some other stuff, and I'm probably planning for July, where I'm actually building out a lot of those shorts and a lot of those TikToks and a lot of that stuff. So I have maybe 150 days worth of content.
Yeah, I still pretty much just run that stuff myself, so that's why nothing's been posted in a while. But I'm working on figuring out how I'm going to do that because I hate it. I hate it so much. I think I might. I'm actually not even kidding. I'm considering hiring my 14-year-old niece to run it because she's a teenager and they like social media, and she'll actually probably do a better job at it than I ever would. So that is actually no, that's my plan. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire a child to do it. Child labor. It's worked for hundreds of years.
I have no comment. I have no comment on that. I would like to plead the fifth.
It's
I would
because
like
it's a good idea.
to plead the fifth. I can't afford it. I don't have children to utilize. I don't have my niece. He's like not even one yet, so I don't think she's ready for it. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong about my niece. I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating my niece, but that's not the point. Maybe when she's 7, I'll
There
employ
you
her.
go.
We got 6 years, guys. We got 6 years. But I digress on all of that. Obviously, you're doing something interesting. I'm waiting for your locals page to come up. I think it's
That'll
gonna
be the same time about.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I need to build mine. I am on Rumble. I just got on Rumble. It's wonderful. Um, I love Rumble. It's the exact same thing that's on YouTube. It's just rumbling. Um, it's such a bad joke. It's such a bad joke.
That
Um,
was wow. Wow.
I'm out of ideas here. I have 14 other jokes that are massively inappropriate. Um,
Nice.
yes, yes, yes. I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to go through it. I do not want to get canceled. I'm already hated enough, but I do want to give you an opportunity again to promote yourself. Obviously, where can people find you, bother you, hit you up, and all that fun stuff?
At Outlaws Comics everywhere. You can get me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. What else we got here? Hold on, let me look. I am everywhere. Truth Social, Parlor, Getter, Vero. I even made a TikTok, but I don't use it because it sucks. I hate it. But yeah, we're at Outlaws Comics everywhere.
Well, that's that. I am on pretty much Twitter at Pop Anime Comics, Instagram Pop Anime Comics, Facebook Pop Anime Comics, YouTube Pop Anime Comics. You can come and find me on TikTok. You're gonna have to do some work to find me on TikTok. It's technically Pop Anime Comics / Conversations in Pop Culture. I forget which it is. A lot of cool stuff is coming. And then I have my website, Pop Anime Comics. You can check that out. I got like 400 articles up there. And then obviously there's a bunch of other stuff as well. Pop Anime Comics Lounge. If you want some other interview stuff that I've done, and I have a T-shirt and all that fun stuff is Pop Anime Comics. So if you type in Pop Anime Comics, it's probably mine. And I own almost everything related to that. So it's a great name to own, and definitely check it out. And if you like what I do here and you like my interview stuff, please subscribe on YouTube or check out me on Facebook, because that's how you're going to find out what I do every week. I do anywhere from usually 3 to 6 interviews a week. And yeah, I have a blast doing it. So that's all I got, everybody. And I'm going to give you kind of the final words to take us out.
Peace.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, everybody. That is a